everyone. We're going to talk about light sources in spectrophotometers in this video. And there are two types. There are continuous and line sources. As the name of a continuous source suggests, the emission intensity produced from a continuous source is continuous. So here we're looking at the emission from a continuous source. We have intensity plotted against wavelength, and you can see a nice continuous spectrum there. Contrast that with the spectrum emitted by a line source. Here it is. Look again at intensity versus wavelength. We no longer have that nice continuous radiation. We have these distinct lines being emitted. You used a line source in the flame AA, and you used continuous sources in the Spec 20 and the HPLC. I think on the next slide we'll talk about continuous sources. Yes, we're only going to talk about these two types, the tungsten lamp and the deuterium lamp. And you can either look at the words here or study this figure. Again, we have intensity as a function of wavelength. And look at the wavelength range where the deuterium lamp emits radiation from 200 to 400 nanometers. That's the UV. That's the only thing I want you to remember about the deuterium lamp, is that it's good for the UV region. And look where the tungsten lamp emits. Not so much in the UV, but more in the visible. Remember, the visible goes from 400 to roughly 800, so the tungsten lamp is a good source for the visible region of the electromagnetic spectrum and part of the IR. But again, the main thing I want you to remember is that deuterium is for the UV, tungsten is for the visible. So those are the only two continuous sources that we'll talk about. Let's talk about some line sources next. And we will talk about the hollow cathode lamp because I think you used it in lab. Lasers are also line sources, but we just don't have time to talk about them. Here is a diagram of a hollow cathode lamp. This is the cathode. As you can see here, it's coated on the inside with the metal of interest, or in other words, your analyte. So in lab, you use the flame AA to determine iron in water samples. You would need a lamp whose cathode was coated with iron on the inside. I think I may interrupt the video and show you some actual hollowed cathode lamps. I want to show you some actual hollow cathode lamps. I have one here, and I think maybe you'll be able to identify the cathode. This is the cathode, and when I look down at that cathode, I see that it's coated on the inside with a white material. Let me try to show it to you. Can you kind of see that inner circle? That's the hollow cathode coated with that white material. That white material is silver. So if we had samples and we wanted to run them for silver, this is the lamp that we would use. And I have another lamp here. Again, it looks very similar. I think you can make out the cathode here. And this time when I look down head on at that cathode, I see a different color. I don't know if you'll be able to see anything here. It might be hard to tell what color that is, but it definitely isn't white. It's actually gold. This cathode is coated with gold on the inside, so if you had samples that you needed to analyze for gold, this is the lamp that you would use. So again, in lab, you used a lamp that was coated on the inside with iron. Let's get back to the video. So I hope you enjoyed looking at those actual lamps. This is the anode. So let's take a closer look at what happens inside of this cathode. The first thing that happens is a potential difference is applied across the cathode and the anode. And the lamp is filled inside with an inert gas, maybe neon or sometimes argon. And what this potential difference does, all that energy, is it ionizes the neon. And where do you think this positively charged ion will want to go? Well, it's going to be attracted to the negatively biased cathode, and it crashes into it. And it does so with such force that it knocks off the metal, or let's imagine that this were a lamp for iron, it would knock off iron in the excited state. That's what this asterisk means. Now, the term that we use is sputtered. This is a real thing. This is a technical term. This is called cathodic sputtering. But again, this neon crashes into the cathode, sputters off iron in the excited state. Excited states are short-lived. As that iron relaxes back down to the ground state, it emits a photon with a distinct wavelength, such a distinct wavelength that we would call it a line. So I think that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed learning about continuous and line sources. Too bad we don't have time to talk about lasers, but thanks for listening.